episode of Making It Work. I'm going to be making some sourdough biscuits. The first thing with any kind of sourdough is you got to feed the starter. So I've pulled it out of the refrigerator. There it is in its little jar house. And you can change up kind of how much you feed it depending on like how much you've got. If it was all the way up to here, I wouldn't feed it as much, but it's a little bit lower than that. But sourdough biscuits only take half a cup of starter, so I'm still not going to feed it a whole lot. I'm going to do equal amounts of unbleached flour, so I'm going to do half a cup of unbleached flour and half a cup of distilled water. Has to be unbleached flour, has to be distilled water, because the bleach in like tap water or the bleach in bleached flour will kill a starter. So we'll just stir that up here. It's going to be kind of the consistency of pancake dough. And once that's stirred up good, you want to kind of get the lumps out. Sourdough, and making anything sourdough is not labor intensive, and it's not even really all that time intensive, because it's a lot of mix it up, wait, but it is timing intensive. So if we want to have these biscuits tomorrow morning, I have to start feeding the starter, you know, the day before. You have to think about that kind of stuff. So now I'm kind of mixing the actual starter. Get it stirred up a bit, and then I'm just going to dump that in there together. And it needs to feed for at least 8 hours. 8 to 12 hours is usually good. And then you can mix up your dough. And the sourdough biscuits, they need to ferment for about 7 hours. It can be longer than that, you know, 7 to 10, something like that. But it has to be a minimum of 7 for that whole fermentation process to take place. Okay, so just dump that in there. Looks a little bit gross, but it is what it is. And I will wash this jar. I wash it every time. I don't use the same jar unless I've washed it, of course. Stir that up. I don't know if you can kind of see it. It's still sort of the consistency of about a pancake batter. But what I'll do next is just cover it up with plastic, just a piece of plastic, and let it sit at room temperature. Or if you have, like when I was making my sourdough starter, I would put it on the water heater because the heat from that really helped with the feeding and the fermentation process. So that's the beginning of sourdough biscuits. The starter has been feeding for about 8 hours now, and so we're ready to stir up the biscuits before we go to bed. So I have started with 2½ cups of unbleached all-purpose flour, and have cut the butter into it with like a pastry blender. It's a ½ cup of butter. And then we're going to add to that, stir this up a little bit, and add a ½ cup of the starter. See, like I said, this one just doesn't require a whole lot of starter. Certain breads, most things that I make require a cup of starter. Bagels, breads, whatever, but this one just takes a ½ cup. I need to have some place to set this stuff without getting it everywhere. Alright, so I'm just going to pour this in on top of it, and then the mixer will do its magic. That's a ½ cup of the starter. And then you also want a cup of cultured milk. So I'm going to use a ½ cup of plain yogurt and a ½ cup of milk to get my cup of cultured milk. And cultured milk could be like kefir or yogurt, sour cream, that sort of thing. Buttermilk would work. Add this yogurt. And then it also requires tablespoon of sweetener. You could use sugar. In this case, I'm going to use honey. So I'll get a tablespoon of honey. This is our local raw honey. Just kind of bloop that in there. Yep, let's fill that up. Thought that would be enough. Okay. And that's all you need for right now. You don't add the salt, the baking powder, and the baking soda until right before you're ready to bake these things. I can get the rest of that honey out of there. That'll work. Put it on my mixer. And remember to start slow if you're using a mixer. You can mix this stuff by hand, it's not a problem. You do not want to overmix biscuits because they'll come out kind of tough or chewy. So just until it comes together. Oh, you know what? It would work better if it was plugged in. This. There we go. So start slow, and then as soon as it starts coming together as a soft dough, stop it. I might help it along there. Probably sticking spatulas in moving mixers is not recommended, but I just don't want to overmix it. Okay, so you can see it's just a little bit on the sticky side, and the biscuit dough is on the stickier side, where like bread dough and stuff is very, very thick. So I'm just kind of scraping it off of my dough hook, and I'll show it to you. And all I'm going to do is I might flatten it out a little bit so that there's a good flat place to sprinkle the baking soda, baking powder, salt mixture on it in the morning. But other than that, I'm going to cover it up and leave it sit in a warm place. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to run my dishwasher. So I'm just going to set it over top of you set it on the counter above the dishwasher, and it'll ferment overnight. It has to ferment for 7 hours, minimum of 7 hours. See you on the flip side. Alright, here we are the next morning. No makeup. Well, I have a little bit of lip color, but otherwise it looked dead. And we're going to check out this biscuit dough here. See what it looks like. It has definitely risen some. It smells good. I'm going to add a half a teaspoon of baking soda, a 3/4 teaspoon of baking powder, sans aluminum. I do not use baking powder that has aluminum in it, because if I take it out of my deodorant and if I take it out of my cookware, why would I want to eat it? And there's also, okay, wait, there's a teaspoon of baking powder in here, and there's a 3/4 teaspoon of sea salt. So I'm just going to kind of sprinkle that over top of the biscuit dough, and then I'll put it back in the mixer and let it do the kneading. Okay, load this thing back up. Go. Oop. Gotta plug it in. It was plugged in. Tim unplugged it. Alright, so just until it's mixed in. That's all we need right here. And I'm dressed like this because I've got some stain and painting projects to work on today. Okay. That is pretty much all it needs. I might let it go just a little bit more. It looks like it's one little spot that needs help. But not much. You do not want to handle the dough much at this point. So now we're gonna, oops, now I've got the dough everywhere. Flour the surface a little bit. And just kind of pat the dough out there. There it is. Like I said, handle it at this point the least amount as possible. I'm going to get the flour across there good. Just kind of pat it out to about 1/2 inch thick. And then we'll start cutting. I'm never so good at this part, what looks like about 1/2 inch thick. I'm thinking that looks pretty good. Now if my grandbabies were helping, we have biscuits out of the center. But I prefer to get as many as I can out of this first thing because you want to handle it, again, as little as possible. Because the more you handle it, the tougher the biscuits will get. So just, I'm using my 10-inch iron skillet because iron skillets make the best biscuits, right? Sides touching. Definitely want to have sides touching. So I'm just fitting those in there best I can. Pat them in there. Apparently the dog is doing something in the other room. Or the cat. Size matters here. I'm going to make a small one. Now, you can just make them fit in there, whatever. With the trimmings, we'll just knead as little as possible and pat it back out. Okay, and cut the rest of them. And I have one more little pan over there, but don't worry about that right now. There, I've got 3 more biscuits. Now, I have melted some butter, real butter, and I'm just going to brush the tops with it. Get the butter brushed on as evenly as possible because otherwise you end up with these weird stripes and stuff. Been there, done that. I love these little silicone brushes because you can stick them right in the dishwasher. Lots of good butter. Lots of good butter. And my oven is not quite ready yet. Wait until your oven is preheated. I used to make that mistake too. And they end up burnt on the bottom and not done on top. Okay? That's that step. And there's the finished product. Thanks for watching Making It Work.